She always lit the candle before bed. Said it helped her wind down. But I think it was something else. A ritual for someone who wasn't me. She went to the bathroom like every night. Hair tied back, the faint scent of lavender hand soap trailing behind her. I stayed on the bed unmoving. The room had the hush of bedtime, but my thoughts weren't quiet. The candle flickered on her nightstand. That soft amber flame, she said, helped her sleep. But tonight, it felt like a signal. Like a light in a window not meant for me. I glanced at the pillow beside it, and there it was. The edge of her diary, just barely visible. Not hidden. Not protected. Just tucked. And that's what struck me. She had never hidden it before. She used to leave it openly on the dresser like it was just another part of her. Now she kept it close. Secret. That single movement, her hand tucking it under the pillow too quickly, was louder than a confession. I didn't want to touch it. But I did. I sat still first, listening to the bathroom faucet run. The fan hummed above like a whisper I couldn't quite hear. My fingers moved on their own. The leather felt warm, like it had absorbed the heat of her body or her guilt. One breath. Then another. I opened it. At first, it was nothing. Grocery lists. Stray thoughts. A scribbled half-poem about waves crashing. She always loved the ocean. But slowly, the tone shifted. The handwriting loosened. Became rushed. Playful. Then she mentioned him. She didn't name him. Just him. But I could feel his shape in her words. She wrote about how he made her laugh when the world felt heavy. How she could breathe when he was around. And how he didn't drain her the way everything else did. That last line. Not even me. Especially not me. My throat closed. My eyes stung, not from the words but from how easily she had written them. Like she'd been holding them in for so long, they'd finally just spilled out joyful, cruel truths. And then the bathroom door clicked. I froze. The diary slipped from my hands and landed softly on the duvet. I stepped back. Like I'd touched fire. She walked in, wrapped in her robe, drying her hands. Smiling. That soft, practiced smile that used to mean love, or at least comfort. Now it felt rehearsed. Reused. She didn't seem to notice the diary, or maybe she did and she was too careful to react. She crawled into bed, turned off the lamp, and whispered, "Good night." I didn't answer. Because I was staring at the candle. Still flickering. Still warm. And I couldn't stop wondering. Had she just lit it for him? She kept writing about him in the margins. Tiny slanted letters like secrets not meant to be read. But they were there, bleeding through the quiet between us. The next morning played out like muscle memory. The clink of her spoon against the ceramic bowl. The soft thud of her keys on the hallway table. The brush of her lips against my cheek, dry, brief, almost polite. We didn't kiss. We grazed. I held the door for her like always. She smiled like always. But inside me, something was no longer willing to play pretend. She left. And within minutes I was standing in the bedroom again. No hesitation this time. No shame. Just hunger. I opened the diary with trembling hands like I might find warmth in it. But what I found was distance. Pages that felt like rooms I wasn't allowed to enter anymore. The entries weren't always coherent. Some trailed off mid-thought, others were lists. Things to remember, things to fake, things to feel. But then there were the margins. Tiny handwriting, slanted and quick. The ink sometimes faint. Like she was trying not to be seen. Or worse, like she wanted to be seen, just not by me. He asked me what I'm afraid of. I told him silence that doesn't hold me. He listens. Not just to what I say. To what I don't. I wish he could see me here, like this. Like this. In our room. In my shirt. These weren't journal entries. They were offerings. Breadcrumbs she left only for him. Private thoughts pinned beside the grocery lists and the work stress, except the grocery list didn't make her voice go soft on the page. He did. Whoever he was, he had become a place for her to exist. I had become the fog she waded through. She didn't write, "I love him." That would have been easier. Cleaner. I could rage against that. Instead, she wrote that she breathed. What do you do with that? I kept reading. Eye skimming, heart dragging. There were no names. Just references. The Thursday team lunch. The 4 o'clock project meeting. The way he always brought 2 coffees and let her pick first, even if she chose the one he wanted. The book about solitude he loaned her, she hadn't finished it. But she underlined things. She was writing a life inside the life we shared. In the margins. The quiet corners. The spaces I never looked. That night, she came home late. Not suspiciously late. Just enough to twist. Said traffic was bad. Kissed me the same way barely. She lit the candle again before bed. Same scent. Same motion. A soft strike of the match, the flare, the light. Like she was invoking something. She turned off the lamp. rolled onto her side. I stayed awake, watching her. The flicker of the candle danced on her skin, and I studied her like a stranger. The rise and fall of her breathing. The way her hand curled loosely near her mouth. She looked peaceful. Untouched. But I knew better. She was somewhere else. Not dreaming, remembering. And I realized I couldn't remember the last time she dreamed of me. Or if she ever did. I started watching the way she looked at things. Not me things. And it terrified me more than any word she ever wrote. That Sunday morning, we moved like clock hands. Slow, routine, always circling the same center but never touching. She buttered her toast with quiet precision, the knife dragging smooth lines across the bread. I poured the coffee, her favorite blend, the one I used to drive across town to buy when we were first married. The kitchen light caught her profile. Still, pale, distant. She stared at her phone a beat too long. Then at the garden through the window. Then at the steam rising from her mug. I asked about the herbs, the mint she planted last spring, the one she used to fuss over like it was fragile. She nodded. Too quickly. Too many nods. Like she was skipping stones over a question she didn't want to sink into. I hadn't noticed how often she did that before. Agreements without engagement. Smiles without roots. There was something wrong with the way she occupied space. Like her body lived here, but her attention was always mid-departure. The diary sat back on her nightstand that night. Not hidden. Not open. Just there like a decoy. She wanted me to see it and assume it had been untouched. But I no longer needed to open it. Because I had learned to read the silence. I saw it in her unfinished thoughts. How she'd begin a sentence and leave it hanging like a coat on a hook she never planned to wear again. In the way she stirred her tea, slow and circular, eyes soft, like she was replaying a memory only she knew. And in how she always paused just before speaking, like choosing which version of herself to deliver. She had become two people. And I was speaking to the ghost of the one who used to love me. I tried once, a small fracture of courage. So, have you been okay lately? She looked up startled. Like I'd interrupted a thought she hadn't meant to share. Then she smiled too wide, too quick. I'm just tired. Tired. It landed between us like a stone in the water. That smile used to mean home. Now it felt like a closing door. A polite exit from honesty. Later, I found her in the bedroom sitting cross-legged by the candle. The same flame. The same flicker. Her journal open in her lap, pen moving like it had been waiting for her. She wasn't writing to herself. I could see it in the tilt of her head. The softness in her eyes. The small release of her breath after every line, like someone was receiving her words and holding them gently. She never said his name. She never needed to. Because after each sentence, her shoulders dropped. Like someone had just written back. Like silence itself had become a conversation. I stopped trying to bring her back. Instead, I began collecting silence. To understand the shape of what she wasn't saying. I let go quietly. No fights. No pleading. No speeches about love and loyalty. Just absence, mine. I stopped asking where she'd been. Stopped reaching across the bed when she turned away. Stopped offering little pieces of myself for her to leave untouched. And still, she didn't notice the difference. Or maybe she did and welcomed it. Instead of confrontation, I watched. I studied the cadence of her footsteps when she returned home. They used to be light, rhythmic, now they dragged like she was hauling something unseen. Something she didn't want me to name. She hummed more now. Softly, under her breath. Always on Thursdays. The day she worked late. That wasn't an accusation. It was just a fact. One I folded neatly into a private collection of patterns. I started keeping time. 7:42 p.m. Her phone lit up the moment she stepped inside before her shoes were off. 8:03 a laugh. Light, breathy? Not for me. 8:16 the candle. Always the candle. Then the journal. She never looked at me during any of it. But even that had stopped hurting. I wasn't tracking to catch her. I was archiving her. As if I could keep some version of her from disappearing completely. I told myself this was patience. But the truth was quieter than that. I was mourning. Not the betrayal. The shift. The way a tide goes out without telling you it's not coming back. One night, I stayed still in bed, faking sleep. Her breath moved carefully beside me, almost reverent. Then, a whisper. Not a word I recognized, just a sound, tender and deliberate. She kissed the tips of her fingers, then touched them to the cover of her diary. It wasn't for me. It had never been for me. And yet, she moved like I wasn't even there. I kept my eyes closed. Felt the ceiling stretch above me like a weightless sky. Every part of me alert and breaking. She laid down beside me moments later, body curling inward, not toward me, but around something I couldn't see. And I realized. She was still capable of love. She just wasn't spending it on me. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, imagining what it might feel like. To be loved. The way she loves him. I asked one question. Just one. And she gave me the wrong answer too smoothly. That's when I knew she'd practiced it. It was the kind of morning that feels like it doesn't want to exist. Muted light through the kitchen window. Sky the color of old bruises. The house was quiet. Too quiet for a weekend. No music. No toast popping. Just the low rhythm of clothes folding like we were rehearsing normal. We sat on opposite ends of the bed. A pile of clean laundry between us. Fabric softener in the air. That synthetic kind of comfort that smells like calm but means nothing. I was pairing socks. She folded her blouses in thirds, always in thirds. And then I saw it. The silk one. Pale blue. Flimsy enough to flutter when she moved. The one she wore Thursday. Except, I never saw it go into the hamper. I would have noticed. I always notice things now. But there it was. Already clean. Already folded. That shouldn't have been possible. I lifted it, ran my thumb across the sleeve, and asked the question like I was asking about the weather. Didn't you wear this to work Thursday? She looked up halfway through folding a cardigan. A moment. Not long. Not even suspicious. Just long enough. Then came the smile. Oh no, she said, voice light. I changed before I left. It didn't feel right. Just like that. No blink. No hesitation. Smooth. Too smooth. And that's what shattered something. She'd practiced that line. Not for this moment specifically, but for a moment. Any moment. The kind of lie that doesn't trip because it's worn in like shoes. But I remembered. I remembered how the blouse caught the hallway light that morning. How she paused at the mirror. Brushed her hair over one shoulder. How she smiled to herself, not at me. I remembered thinking she looked radiant. Like she was going somewhere that mattered. Somewhere I wasn't invited. But now she was telling me it never happened. That she changed. That the version I saw, the one I remember, never existed. I nodded. Said nothing. That silence was louder than anything else. It wasn't the lie that broke me. It was the choice to lie when she didn't have to. She could have said, yes, I wore it. That would have ended it. But she needed a cleaner version of the truth. One that kept me on the outside. I folded another towel. She kept humming. And in that small, soft space between us, something invisible snapped. A thread. No noise. No tear. But once broken, you can never quite tie it the same again. I stopped reading the diary. Not because I forgave her, but because I couldn't survive another entry written without me in it. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels hollow. Like walking through a house that remembers laughter but doesn't echo anymore. I stopped reading the diary. Not out of strength, but out of survival. Each page had become a room I wasn't allowed to enter. Each line, a mirror that didn't reflect me. It wasn't just the absence of my name. It was the absence of us. The memories she cherished, the feelings she recorded, none of them belonged to the life I thought we were still living. So I closed the book and left it there. Beneath her pillow. Her flamelit secret. But quitting didn't bring peace. It only fed the thing that grows in shadows, doubt. Every smile she gave her phone felt like betrayal with lipstick. Every exhale after journaling felt like a goodbye she'd already rehearsed. Days passed. Or maybe they just blurred. I went to work. I cooked dinner. I folded laundry. I answered emails with all good and replied to texts with thumbs up emojis. I became a well-dressed ghost. She noticed. One night she asked if I was okay. I answered without thinking. Just tired. Her own words. The ones she'd used when she wanted to be left alone, not comforted. She nodded. The same quick nod she gives when she doesn't really want the answer. I thought cutting myself off from the diary would give me back a sense of control. Instead, it became a void I filled with worse things. Imagined details. Fiction more vivid than truth. When she smiled mid-text, I imagined his name lighting up her screen. When she sighed at the end of writing, I wondered if it was sadness for me. Or longing for him. One night, I stood just outside our bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. Inside, the candle flickered. And I heard it, the soft glide of her pen across paper. A steady, intimate sound. Like breath. Like trust. I didn't knock. Didn't enter. Just listened. I had become a man listening to the heartbeat of a life that no longer included him. Later, I heard her close the diary. Heard the pillow shift. Then footsteps, soft, deliberate. She stepped into the hallway and saw me. Our eyes met for just a second. She didn't startle. She didn't hide the book. She just looked at me with something between exhaustion and mercy. She knew I knew. And I think she pitied me for not saying it out loud. That night I had a dream. In it she wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She was just packing. Her coat was folded over her arm. Her candle had been blown out. The room behind her was neat, as if she wanted to leave it better than she found it. She walked past me, not with malice, not with fear, just indifference. Like I was furniture she no longer needed. She kissed my forehead and left. When I woke, she was there, breathing soft beside me. But it didn't feel like presence. It felt like delay, because deep in some unspoken, terrifying way, she was already gone. She left the house smiling that morning, and I sat at the kitchen table staring at her untouched teacup, knowing I'd never follow her in my mind again. She smiled before she left. Not brightly, not cruelly, just enough to pretend she hadn't already packed her heart. Her coat was zipped to her chin, hair pulled back, keys in her hand like a lifeline. She kissed my cheek. Soft, hollow. Have a good day, she said. But it wasn't a wish. It was a line from a script she no longer cared to rewrite. The door closed behind her and I heard her footsteps fade down the walkway, not rushed, not hesitant. Just gone. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the 2 teacups she left behind. Both full. Both cooling. One for her. One for whoever she became when she wrote. Neither had been touched. That's when I knew. Today, she didn't even need the ritual. Whatever she got from him, she didn't have to summon it anymore. It lived in her now. Carried. Constant. And something in me bent. Not a snap. Not drama. Just a slow, inward collapse, like a ceiling finally admitting it can't hold the weight. I stood. The chair scraped softly against the floor, and I walked to our bedroom with a quiet I hadn't earned. The candle was half melted. Her journal tucked under the pillow, just visible. No longer hidden. No longer sacred. Just ignored. Like I'd become. I didn't reach for it. What was left to learn that I didn't already feel in my bones? Instead, I opened my dresser, pulled out the travel bag I hadn't touched in years, the one we used for long weekends when we still liked each other in public. I laid it on the bed. Started small. A few shirts, socks, toothbrush, a book I hadn't read since our honeymoon. Not to leave, not yet, just to see if I remembered how to move for myself, how to make space in a life I'd been crushed beneath. I wasn't punishing her. I wasn't even angry. I was just tired of orbiting someone who didn't look up anymore. Tired of mistaking her silence for stillness. It wasn't peace. It was vacancy. I zipped the bag. The sound felt strange, too loud in this house of whispers. Final. Sharp. Mine. That evening, she came home with that same worn smile. Her coat came off. Her shoes lined up. She saw the bag in the corner. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. She walked past it like it wasn't there, lit the candle on her nightstand, and opened the journal. The pen moved. Soft. Certain. She didn't ask where I was going, and I didn't tell her. Because maybe we both knew it. I'd already left. I wasn't meant to see the last page. But I did. And it told me everything, just too late. She said she was going to the store. Her voice had that same borrowed lightness she used for small lies. The kind that don't matter unless you count all the times they do. No list. No keys jingling. Just a half-zip jacket and a soft back soon. I waited 15 minutes. Long enough for guilt to settle but not harden. Then I stood. I didn't know why I walked to the bedroom. Habit, maybe? Or maybe I was looking for something I didn't want to name. Not hope. Not evidence. Something quieter. Something like permission. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew something had shifted. The pillow, the one that always covered her journal, was gone. The diary was out in the open now. Sitting on the bed. No longer protected. No longer pretending. It looked like it had been left there on purpose. Not carelessness. Not defiance. Something else. An offering? A confession? I told myself I wouldn't. That I was done needing to see the pieces she never offered me. But my hands moved anyway. The leather still held her warmth. Like it hadn't finished being hers. I didn't flip through the pages. I went straight to the back. And there it was. The handwriting was tighter. Leaner. Like her thoughts had pressed too hard against the page. I love him. But I can't leave. He's too good. Too dependable. Too not him. There was a line drawn beneath it. A hesitation. An ache in ink. Then. Tomorrow. I'll talk to him. He deserves that much. There was a date. It was today. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, the journal still open in my lap. Time moved differently in that moment, not faster, not slower. Just thinner. Like breath on glass. So this was it. Her truth. Not explosive. Not cruel. Just quiet abandonment dressed as mercy. She wasn't staying because of love. She was staying because of inertia. Because I had made life easy enough to keep, but not enough to feel. And I, in the end, had become the weight that made her feel trapped. The kindness that kept her from leaving. The guilt she dressed in silence. I heard the front door open. Keys on the table. Then footsteps slower than usual. She paused in the hallway. Maybe she already knew. When she stepped into the bedroom, her eyes landed on the journal. Still resting on the bed, half open, the way truth sometimes is. She saw me. And for the first time in weeks, no smile. No performance. No line to smooth over the cracks. Just her. Still. Staring. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Because everything she would have said was already written. And everything I would have felt had already passed through me like a storm I never saw coming until it was gone. We didn't break apart in a single moment. We unraveled in gestures. And it was the quiet that hurt the most. She didn't light the candle that night. For the first time in months, the room stayed dark. No flicker. No ritual. Just the faint hum of the heater and the unbearable clarity between us. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded in her lap. The diary lay between us like a third presence, exposed, unblinking, real. She didn't reach for it. Neither did I. I was going to tell you, she said finally. Her voice didn't tremble, it shrank. Like she didn't want to wake the silence. I didn't respond. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I had already read it. Her reasons. Her confessions. Her tomorrow that was now tonight. She looked down. Soft breath. Softer words. I didn't want it to be like this. Like what? Like a fracture you can't name until it's deep enough to split light? Like a goodbye sewn into the pages of something once called home? She started to explain gently, deliberately. Words chosen the way you'd handle glass. That she had been fading for a long time. That he wasn't the cause, just the reflection. That my love had been safe but too quiet to hold her together. And still I said nothing. Because I had already heard it. In ink. In margins. In every Thursday hum and every unfinished cup of tea. Her eyes welled up but she made no sound. Her tears fell like ours. And I sat still. I didn't reach for her. Because for the first time I realized it. My silence wasn't grace. It was abandonment in soft clothes. Do you hate me? She asked. I looked at her for a long time. Long enough to remember who she had been to me. And who I had become beside her. No, I said quietly. But I think you stopped seeing me a long time ago. And I kept trying to love you louder than you could feel. She turned her head away, not in shame. In surrender. The kind of glance you give someone when you both know it's too late and no one meant for it to be. We didn't sleep. We didn't fight. There was no last embrace, no words to pretend this could still be stitched. We just lay there. Still. Separate. Awake. Two people who had once spoken in the same language. Until one of them learned to listen to someone else's voice. She stayed. But I left not with bags, not with anger. Just with the version of myself that finally let go. Morning light moved slowly across the bedroom wall, tracing soft gold along the curtain seams. She was already awake, standing at the window wrapped in the wool sweater I bought her last winter. The one she said was too warm, too thick. But now she wore it like a memory. The bed was made. The diary gone. Not hidden. Just removed. As if she knew it no longer had the right to rest between us. We didn't say much in the days that followed. Words felt heavy. And neither of us had the strength to lift them anymore. We moved around each other like survivors in a broken house. Careful with door frames. Cautious with light switches. No yelling. No apologies. Just a quiet avoidance of the sharp edges we used to ignore. She offered to talk again. Her voice low like she didn't expect yes. I shook my head soft. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. It's not about him, I said. It's about everything I let slide. Because I was afraid of being the one left behind. She didn't try to explain. She only nodded. Once. Slowly. For once, not too quickly. That night, I lit the candle. Not her. Me. I didn't open her journal. I didn't open my mouth. I just sat beside the flickering light, letting it move across my skin, warm but not comforting. And I realized something. The grief had already happened. So had the betrayal. And so had the letting go. All that remained was the decision. In the quiet hours before dawn, I packed the travel bag again. Same shirts. Same shoes. But this time I zipped it slowly. Deliberately. She stirred behind me in bed, half awake, half dreaming. As I slipped my coat on, she whispered, not begging, not broken. Just asking. Are you coming back? I looked at her. Eyes rimmed red. Face softer than I remembered. I don't know, I said gently. But I need to hear my own thoughts again. She didn't reach for me. And that was the answer. I stepped out into the morning air, cold, still, sky the color of old paper. And for a moment I stood there, hands in my pockets, waiting to feel something. But what came wasn't relief, wasn't grief, just stillness. A silence that wasn't heavy. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't chasing her. I was walking toward myself.